Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure we'll have some others hopping on as we get going here over the next few minutes. But today we're really excited to have Samantha with us from KJK on to do this presentation for us on navigating the Corporate Transparency Act. I know that for those of you that aren't familiar with Cultivate, we are a small nonprofit that helps aspiring entrepreneurs and small businesses all throughout Ohio. We have workshops every month that we try and address key issues that small businesses are dealing with. And one of the things that we are starting to get questions on is this Corporate Transparency Act, more specifically, people wanting to understand what they need to do for this BOI form that Samantha will share some information for us on as well. So we're just really excited to be able to do this presentation because there's so many questions and uncertainty and confusion around what has to happen here. And actually, also a lot of small businesses don't even realize that this is something that they need to address. Um, so we are recording this presentation, and we intend to put this on our website when we're done. So uh, people that missed it or want to kind of come back later in the year and work on doing this for their own business will have a quick access refresher for it. And so that's it. I just, again, Samantha is here from KJK, and I'll let her explain and all about their firm and what she does. But thank you, Samantha, for joining us and doing this for us today.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I appreciate you having me today. When you approached me and my firm about this, I thought it was an absolutely great idea because, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. There are a lot of small businesses that don't even realize that this is out there. It's effective and it is designed to be something that small businesses need to comply with. And there are consequences for failure to comply. So I'm really glad that you have me here today. And thank you all so much out there that are joining. I really appreciate you taking the time. This is important stuff, and I'm just really glad to be here. And yeah, as Matt said, I'm from the law firm of Corman, Jackson, and Krantz. I am a corporate and securities associate. We have a team here of corporate associates, partners. We call ourselves a task force, and we are all about keeping an eye on this Corporate Transparency Act and making sure that our clients and our contacts understand what it is and how it applies to them. And if you have any questions, of course, we will have a Q&A portion to the event at the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer them then. Otherwise, I also will have my contact information, and you can definitely contact me. Our offices are both in Cleveland and Columbus. I'm down in Columbus quite a bit, though I am in the Cleveland office. So happy to meet with any of you individually or, of course, by Zoom like we're doing right now to get a little bit more into some of the nuances. Because basically the presentation today is going to be an overview of what this is, what are the requirements, does it apply to me? And if it does, what do I do? And, when do I have to do it by? Anyway, so I guess we can go ahead and get started. Okay, let's move on to our next slide. Okay, so basically, again, this is an overview of what I'll be covering today in the presentation. Like I said, what is a CTA? Where did it come from? Why is it here? Basically, how to determine if your company, your small business is a reporting company and what some of the exemptions you'll want to keep in mind are. And if you are a reporting company, who is a beneficial owner of the company, and also who is a company applicant. And then once you determine those things, okay, what do I have to report for those beneficial owners and company applicants? When do I have to do it by? How do I do it? What happens if I don't do it? And what are some of the current legal challenges? I do want to touch on that because right now there are some legal challenges to this piece of legislation. And so I just kind of want to make you guys aware of that and what our advice is based on some of those challenges right now. And then of course we'll get to our Q&A. And anyway, okay, so let's get started. What is the CTA? The CTA is actually, for me, a lawyer here, a corporate lawyer, this has been a big deal and has been coming for a while. We've been looking at this for a while. And it actually started back in 2021. Congress enacted what we call the Corporate Transparency Act, or the CTA for short, as part of the 2021 National Defense Authorization Act. And with that legislation, Congress tasked an organization called the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN, to basically come up with a rule and implement it. And you'll see throughout the presentation, as Matt even said when he was introducing me, there's a lot of acronyms here. There's CTA, FinCEN, BOI reports, things like that. So I'll try to make sure that it's very clear what all of those mean. Anyway, so yeah, so the Congress said to FinCEN, hey, we want this corporate transparency rule enacted within the next couple years. And basically the reason that they're doing this is because there's a lot of bad actors, let's call them, that are utilizing these businesses to create these shell companies, and they're exploiting those companies to basically launder money and other types of illegal activity. And so the government is saying, hey, if we can basically require businesses to tell us who owns them, what is it, like give that information up, then they're hoping that that can kind of combat some of that illicit activity that's being used for some of these shell companies. Anyway, so FinCEN went out, they had a rule, they came up with a proposed rule, they had a rulemaking process and comment, and the final ruling came out on September 22nd of 2022. I'm sorry, September 29th of 2022. And actually, so it took some time too, once the final rule came out, to actually have it be implemented. So obviously a lot has happened, and now here we are, it is finally effective starting at the beginning of this year. So it's kind of been a long time coming. There's been a lot of different iterations of the rule. But basically my point is, throughout all of this, starting in 2021, when this was talked about, until now, it's finally here. It hasn't gone away, and it is now effective. So again, I'm really glad you guys are here to talk with me about this, because it really has been a long time coming. And unfortunately, still not a lot of people know about it. And as my last point here says, about 30 million existing companies are going to be required to file a report under the CTA. So that's a lot of businesses. And I'm going to guess that most of those 30 million companies, again, may not even know that this exists. Okay, so here we are. The CTA legislation is finally effective. What do you guys have to do? What do you have to know as small business owners? First of all, the Corporate Transparency Act and this reporting obligation only applies if your company is considered a reporting company. And of course, FinCEN comes out with a definition for what that is. A lot of these rulings are all about those defined terms, and does your business fit within that? And so a reporting company, as here I have the definition for you guys, easy for you to return to at any time. Anyway, it's a domestic or foreign corporation, limited liability company, or other entity created or registered to do business by the filing of a document with the Secretary of State or similar office under the laws of any state or Indian tribe. So for the most part, it's a pretty easy definition. If your entity is an LLC or is a corporation, right there, it says it. And if, again, filing a document with the Secretary of State, if you go on the Ohio Secretary of State's website, you pay that $99 and you file articles of organization, you created an entity, you're a reporting company. There is a little bit of nuances here. Unfortunately, at first, some companies were wondering, well, what if I'm a limited partnership, or, some other type of entity that isn't specifically listed here? But again, there's that catch-all of, or any other entity created by the filing of a document. So yes, it does apply to those other types of typical entities that you would think of, like limited partnerships, and so on. And also, I do want to make note that it's domestic or foreign. So if you happen to own a foreign company or know someone that does, if they have a presence here in the United States, or they're foreign registered to do business here in the United States, they are also considered a reporting company if they filed those articles essentially to do business here as a foreign qualified entity too. So anyway, let's say we're all reporting companies here. I'm gonna guess probably most of our clients at the firm are reporting companies. That's a pretty kind of easy way to check the box. Like, okay, so this might actually apply to me. If it applies to me, well, are there any ways to be exempt from this? When do I not have to make this filing? And I will say, like, preface this next slide by saying it's going to look a little overwhelming, but I'm just putting all the information out there for you guys so that you have it and can refer back to it. And if you happen to know anybody who you think might also benefit from some of these exemptions that I'm going to talk about, then they're all there for you, but I won't touch on too many. And like I said, we're talking about there's 23 exemptions to reporting companies. So just because your business was, it says LLC and you filed articles of incorporation, articles of organization with the Ohio Secretary of State, you might be able to be exempt and not have to report if you fall under one of FinCEN's 23 exemptions. Obviously, 23 is a big number. But I want to preface that by saying, ultimately, while 23 can be a pretty big number, these exemptions are really designed to hit on those businesses that are already subject to these types of requirements in other ways. So for instance, I'll say public utilities. Pretty clear that those public utilities are going to be required to share information on their owners in other ways by other agencies and things like that. So I really would say overall that a lot of these exemptions aren't necessarily going to apply to the everyday small business. And so I just want to make that clear. And I think also too, you see 23 exemptions, you're like, oh my goodness. That is obviously something on my end to keep an eye on, because it's funny enough, a lot of these exemptions, it's not a straightforward analysis. It is very, you only meet this if you, or meet this exemption if you, hit all these prongs. So anyway, I wanted to include for all of you on this presentation today, all of the exemptions here, but, and I'm only going to touch on just a couple of them solely so that you guys have an idea of what eventually, you could be exempt for a couple different reasons as a small business owner. So the first one I want to talk about as far as exemptions, like I said, I'm just going to touch on a couple of them, and it's really more for that you guys have an idea of what the most common exemptions that we see from our clients. And the first one that I'm going to touch on is the large operating company exemption. So right now, most of our clients that are small business owners, might be, them and their spouse, or, a few employees and family members. We do handle a lot of family businesses at our firm and things like that. So, maybe you're a small business and you're just getting started, but, maybe your ultimate goal down the line is to get some investors and grow the business and maybe hire some more employees and really take this thing, far. And if that's the case, depending on how things play out, what could eventually happen is that your business could become exempt from these reporting requirements if you are a large operating company. And in order to be considered a large operating company and get this exemption, there are 3 pieces that all of them have to be met. A lot of these exemptions, like I mentioned previously, there's a lot of prongs and all of them have to be met. So for the large operating company, if you have an operating presence at a physical office in the US, it has to either be owned or a leased property by the company. And again, it can't be like your residence. You actually have to have like a physical, business space where you do your work. Then that's obviously one prong. If you have 20 or more full-time employees, the FinCEN defines full-time employees as employees that average 30 hours per week or 130 hours per month. But I will say, if you happen to, say you have 22 employees, and then, two of those employees or three of those employees leave, then if you fall below that threshold, your company would no longer be considered an operating company, and a filing to FinCEN would then be triggered. And then finally, the last piece in order to be considered a large operating company is that you have $5 million in gross receipts. And that has to be reported on your, IRS tax returns and things like that. And only for money, that's been collected from sources inside the US, not outside the US, depending on, where you're doing business. If it is outside of the country, that particular revenue wouldn't count. So anyway, I just always want to mention this particular large operating company, even when we're dealing with our small business clients, our startups, other entities that are just kind of in the very early stages. This is something that, one day could apply, and then you obviously would at that time be exempt from having to file these reports. Anyway, so I'll just touch on one more, and then we'll kind of get into the nitty gritty of how to determine what needs to be filed. Okay. Like I said, the only other one that I want to take into account here is the inactive entities. And I say this because a lot of our clients, and perhaps some of you guys out there too, maybe you created an LLC for, X, Y, and Z reason. And, for whatever reason, you don't end up doing much with it, or maybe you do for a while and it's kind of something that just sort of, falls by the wayside, and it's not being actively utilized to engage in business. And you might think, okay, well, I haven't used this business. I don't do anything with it. I don't have employees. I don't, bring in money. I don't even have an office space. I'm just, it's something, again, sometimes, especially with Ohio, which is nice, honestly. It's, it's not too difficult to file that initial articles of organization to create your LLC. So, you might think, I'm going to spend that $99 and start this LLC and see where it goes. And then it's just something that falls by the wayside. Unfortunately, that FinCEN, they always are trying to make things just a little bit more difficult, just because your entity might be inactive and might not be something that you're currently utilizing right now. That doesn't necessarily mean you are off the hook from filing one of these reports with FinCEN. So basically, and like I said again previously, this is a piece here where if you want to be considered an inactive entity and not make this report, you have to meet all of these pieces of the criteria that is on this slide here. Again, it has to be in existence on or before January 1, 2020. I think that's kind of the biggest one that our clients deal with when they think, hey, I'm inactive, I just don't use this entity, but they only have created it last year. Well, right here, that does not meet the definition or FinCEN's definition of an inactive entity. So that client would still be required to file a report with FinCEN. Anyway, so I will say too, one other thing, I'll specifically focus on that last point there on my slide about how dissolving an entity does not necessarily make it an inactive entity under the CTA. Because first of all, I will say right away, if we have a particular client that says, hey, I created this LLC and I'm not doing anything with it, like, do I need to report to FinCEN? We'll go through some of these prongs here to see if they, are an inactive entity. And if they are, great, then we say, yep, we advise them, yes, you are exempt and don't worry about filing. But if not, say they hold some type of assets, there's been a change in ownership in the preceding year, whatever it might be. Or even if they have some money in the bank account, things like that. And if they're not utilizing it, I will say what we always tell our clients to do is go ahead and dissolve that entity. Again, in Ohio, it's not too complicated to go and start the dissolution process. And it's a pretty quick way, or I should say the Secretary of State is pretty quick in approving the dissolution. But again, if this is something that you are concerned about, I definitely recommend talking to someone who has kind of become an expert in this area, whether it's me or another individual, just because, we're keeping a close eye on this because it's tough. Technically in Ohio, even after you are dissolved, you're still considered somewhat of an active entity. I believe it's for at least a year after the dissolution. So there is kind of that nuance there. And that's, again, why I like to mention this, because I do think it is something that could come into play. And I want to make sure that everybody here knows that it's important to understand whether or not, if you're not using the LLC that you might have decided to form a year ago, what does that mean with this particular set of regulations? And I will, as my last piece before moving on to, who is a beneficial owner, say that this is a reason why there has been some pushback here with the CTA, because there is a little bit of, lack of clarity. What happens when we dissolve? Why do we still have to file a report? So that's why I just kind of wanted to make sure to mention it to you guys. Okay, so enough of that. Let's go on to the fun stuff, right? And talk about who is a beneficial owner. So if you've determined that your business is a reporting company and no exemption applies, then what FinCEN requires is that you report your company's beneficial owners. And of course, FinCEN loves their defined terms and their definitions. So beneficial owner, there's a two-pronged test. It's someone who directly or indirectly owns or controls not less than 25% ownership of the reporting company, or directly or indirectly exercises substantial control. So I'll take both of those prongs in turn. Okay. Determining a 25% ownership. Thankfully, what we've found so far with some of our small business clients where we've helped file these reports for them, it's pretty clear to determine, who has that 25% or more ownership interest, because, let's say it's a husband and a wife, it's an equal 50-50% ownership interest. They both own 50% of the business. Great, we're gonna report both of them. So it just gets a little bit more nitty gritty, down into the weeds, I'll say, if those ownership interests are in a different way, are not necessarily so clear, like some of the examples that I have here, convertible instruments, capital or profit interest. I won't take a lot of time now on this particular presentation to go over what some of those other interests are, but if anyone has any questions, please feel free to let me know. Otherwise, again, it's not less than 25%. So as long as you have a 25% or more ownership interest in the company, then you would be considered a beneficial owner and have to report. I will say though, sometimes with some of our small business clients or startups, they'll bring in, some sort of minority investor that maybe is only getting 10% of an ownership interest. And in that case, they wouldn't have to apply, or they wouldn't have to report who they are. But I caveat that by saying that not only are we dealing with the 25% ownership prong, we're also dealing with substantial control. So I'll start by saying on this next slide here is, like I mentioned before, say your small business has a 10% owner. Great. They don't meet that 25% threshold. However, does that individual that holds that 10% ownership interest, do they exercise substantial control? Because if that's the case, then yeah, they would still need to share their information with FinCEN. So substantial control, I give both the definition and some examples here because, and I will say this isn't an exhaustive list, and FinCEN also has not given us an exhaustive list. I really do think it is a business by business analysis as to, who are the key players in the business. It might be the president or the CFO. Maybe it's the HR manager and she makes, the biggest decisions at the firm, obviously hiring, but maybe she does a little bit more than that, depending on, who wears what hat at the particular business. So that's why I do want to mention that. But there is some good examples here that FinCEN has given us. Senior officers, like I just said, president, CFO, COO, if your firm, has a general counsel, an in-house lawyer. all of those individuals would be considered to exercise substantial control. So say you have a CFO, someone that you're bringing into your small business to just handle the books, make sure your taxes are getting filed and all that stuff. But they don't really do anything else besides that. They don't have an ownership interest in the company. Under FinCEN's rules here, you would need to disclose the information of your CFO because that individual is a senior officer and they're an important decision maker, for instance, of the reporting company. So again, it is a two-part test. You may have individuals that both are a 25% or more, or should I say have more than 25% of an ownership interest in the company, and they also exercise substantial control, or you may only have one or the other. But it is, again, two prongs. It is an or situation, not an and. So it is like that could raise the amount of people that you have to disclose to FinCEN. So I do want to mention that. And there's a couple other examples here, individuals having the authority to appoint or remove certain officers or directors, if they're important decision makers, like I said before. And if, of course, gotta love FinCEN. They always have that catch-all provision at the end. The individual has another form of substantial control. What is the other form they're referring to? I don't know. But we do err on the side of caution here, at least what we tell our clients. So, when we're talking to them about their business and they say, hey, yeah, we have an individual who we brought into our small business to help us out with X, Y, and Z, we'll take a look at kind of their duties to determine whether or not they might be considered to exercise substantial control. Okay, anyway, so that's beneficial owners. Also, I will say the other piece that I hinted at in the overview section is that you also have to say or tell FinCEN who your company applicant is. And I will talk about that on our next slide here. Okay, so company applicants. And I will start with the note that I have on this particular slide that, and thankfully, this is something that FinCEN ended up changing after getting some backlash before the rule went into effect at the beginning of the year. So basically, if your company has been around, which I'm going to guess most of you on this call, it's probably the case. So I, again, want to touch on it in case you happen to, create a new entity or know anybody else who this would apply to. But if your company has been in existence before January 1st of this year, you do not need to include company applicant information in your filing with FinCEN. There was a lot of backlash because some of these companies, I don't know how many of you guys out there, your company's been around, 15, 20 years or more. How would you know? I mean, or how would I know? How would any of us really be able to remember who it was that helped you, or if it was maybe a secretary or someone like that helped you file your formation documents and things like that. So I think that was the biggest pushback there. So it's only for any businesses that were created starting this year on January 1st, where you would have to disclose the company applicant. So anyway, what is a company applicant? A company applicant is the individual who directly files the documents that create the reporting company. And I put or registers the reporting company specifically to reference the idea that, again, foreign entities that are registered to do business in the United States are, again, required to still potentially make these reports. Or also, the second piece I have on here is primarily responsible for directing or controlling the filing. And I want to say this as a way to remind you guys that, first of all, everyone here that has to be reported has to be an individual. It can't be your company name or anything like that. It's got to be individual humans here that are being reported. And so the company applicant is going to be that person that makes the filing and is primarily responsible for the filing. And so I say this because I'm going to give you an example, obviously using me and our firm here. A lot of our small business clients have said, hey, can you handle this filing for us? And, since this is something we're, rolling out on the daily. So they are directing us and asking us and me as the attorney to make the filing. And so when I make the filing, I obviously am considered the company applicant because I'm the one directly filing the information. I guess let me backtrack for a second. When I say directly filing the documents, I guess I should specify that if our client asks us to create their entity, file their articles, draft their operating agreements, or their bylaws, get them an EIN with the IRS, then I would be considered the company applicant because I'm the one that's doing that. And the client who asked me to do it or directed me to do it is also the company applicant. So then when it comes my turn then to file this BOI report for my client, I'm listing both them and me as the company applicants here. But it can't be any more than 2 individuals. So either if it's, if I am a small business owner, I have my own business and I went and created I went on the Secretary of State's website and I filed those articles myself, then it's just me. No one else directed me to do it. I did it myself. It's my company. I'm the company applicant, and that's it. Anyway, so again, more definitions, more ands and ors. But yes, so if you are forming any sort of new businesses, either at the beginning of this year or onward, definitely note that company applicant piece as well. Okay. So you guys have determined, you're a reporting company and you know who your beneficial owners are, you're a small business and maybe it's just, you and a couple others. Great. So what do you have to then tell FinCEN in this report? For reporting requirements for the actual company itself, pretty straightforward, I'll say. So say your company is ABC LLC. You would obviously on the beneficial owner information report form, you'll put ABC LLC. Do you have any trade names? Or a DBA? Am I doing business as, Bob Jones, CPA or something? Like, let's say that that's my DBA. Then I would obviously need to let FinCEN know that, or otherwise you just say, not applicable. And then the street address at the principal place of business. And again, it has to be an actual, business address and the jurisdiction of formation. So again, if most of you guys are registered to do business in Ohio, you just put Ohio. And then your IRS taxpayer identification number, which is for most people going to be that EIN that I mentioned. Obviously, I'm sure all of you are aware that when you start a business, you definitely need to get an EIN number issued from the Internal Revenue Service, and that particular number is used to open a bank account and things like that. So that's for, okay, what does your company need to report on your company? And then we get to what do you need to report on beneficial owners and company applicants? And this is applicable to both here. So if you are an entity that is formed this year, both of the information for your beneficial owners and your company applicants are going to be the same with just a couple caveats. Full legal name, so for me, Samantha Marie Cira, date of birth for me, 7/15/93. Residential street address. This is very important for beneficial owners because a lot of them have been like, well, wait a second. We don't want to give out our personal home address here. Can't we just put, the address of our business, wherever that is located? No, you cannot. It has to be your residential street address. But I will say for a company applicant, then like for me, for instance, if I'm considered the company applicant for my client, because I filed their articles of organization, I could put my law firm's address for my information. Other than that, it's got to be your actual residential street address. And then I'll just basically say these last 2 bullets here are just fancy ways of saying you need to include your driver's license or a passport and the photograph of either of those documents. There are a few other documents that are applicable. I'm going to guess, though, for all of us here, either a driver's license or passport is going to be something that we all have here. And yeah, so FinCEN on their form has a way to, upload a picture of that document. Definitely make sure that that document is clear. We've had some clients that have given us their passport and things like that, in order to help them with their filings. And they give us this like grainy picture. And, we don't want FinCEN coming back to us and being like, hey, we can't read the numbers on here, whatever. So yeah, definitely, that's another big piece here too, is to make sure that information is also there. Okay, so that's the information that needs to go for beneficial owners and company applicants. And then, if that's all pretty easy, hopefully as all of us as, small business owners and for thankfully a fair amount of our clients, it is a pretty straightforward process. You go on FinCEN's website and you put in all the information, and for our beneficial owners, company applicants, for the reporting company, and you press submit. Great. So if that's the case, one of the biggest points that I wanted to touch on is, what is your guys' deadline? You here on this call as small business owners, when do you have to do this by? Because there are real deadlines here. Again, like I mentioned, I think, throughout the presentation, the effective date is January 1 of this year. So it is officially in effect. FinCEN is actively taking these submissions. And so if you are, I think, as I mentioned previously, if you create an entity this year, starting on January 1st or later, you have 90 days after you form your company to file your initial report. It used to be 30, but thankfully FinCEN changed that up to give us and all of you small business owners a little bit more time to get this information together and to make that initial filing. But I do want to say, though, if you happen to start a new business next year, then you'll be back down to 30 days. I will mention that because that is an important distinction. Like I said, FinCEN initially just wanted 30 days, but changed it to 90 days, understanding that this is a brand new, set of reporting requirements, but that will go down to 30 days starting next year. So, but the good thing is, and I do want to obviously stress to everybody on the call today that if you are a company that has been around last year before, anytime before January 1 of this year, you have until January 1 of 2025 to make your initial report. So thankfully, it's an entire year. But, here we are in April, we're all into the second quarter already. And like I said at the beginning, like Matt said, a lot of small businesses still don't know about this, even though this legislation is actively in effect. So I will say, it's better to do the filing sooner rather than later, especially if it's something that's going to be a little bit of a simpler process. Might as well get it out of the way. Or if you think it might be a little bit more of a complicated analysis, contact your, attorney or anyone else who would be an expert on this particular process so they can start looking into it because, at least for our clients here, again, we have so many small business clients that, regardless of the fact that they might have been around for a few years and they got a little time, we don't want everybody, FinCEN doesn't want everybody filing these things, December 30th. And yeah, it would be, a stampede to the finish line type of situation. So definitely sooner rather than later, get that going. And I will also mention too, this is a particularly interesting piece, but say you make an initial report or we make one for you. And oh goodness, a month from now, you change addresses, your business moves to a bigger space. Or say you told us that your birthday, or maybe one of the beneficial owners' birthdays that you don't know, by heart, was a certain date and it's actually a different date. So the information initially submitted was wrong. You only have 30 calendar days after the date you become aware or have reason to know. Those are very lawyer words there. But again, becomes aware or has reason to know of the inaccuracy. So if you're asking me, how would FinCEN know that you've moved your business? How would FinCEN know that you might have, or spelled someone's street name wrong or something? Or who's monitoring all of this 24/7? We don't know, honestly. It's all a little hazy as to how this is being monitored and, reviewed. But it is something that's very important to keep in mind, especially if you do utilize a lawyer, whether it's, my firm or another firm, to help out with this stuff, definitely keep us aware of changes, or yeah, maybe it's just you're a solo practitioner, you are, starting up a business, and then you bring in an investor, your very first investor, and that investor has a big chunk in the company. Well, you gotta obviously then update that report and let FinCEN know about that new individual that would be considered a beneficial owner. And that gets me to the next point of potential penalties. This is another piece and why I think it is so incredibly important that that small businesses know about this stuff, because there are penalties. FinCEN has penalties that they are, I don't know, throwing out there. I don't want to say threatening us with, because I don't think that's the point of this. I just think it's, it's something that they want businesses to take seriously. They don't want them to just think, oh yeah, like I don't have to worry about this. Yes, you small businesses in particular do have to worry about this. And if they don't file in a timely manner, there are civil and criminal penalties. And I put them up here on the slide, just as a little bit of a I don't know, capitalized, bold, underlined reasoning here that this stuff is important. I don't know how FinCEN will assess the penalties. I don't know, again, how will they necessarily know if you fail to update a report? Or maybe you don't fail to update it, you're just a little late in updating it. It's unclear now. And I do think that there definitely will be some sort of grace period as all of this continues to roll out and gets refined. But definitely important to remember that these penalties and understand that this is a really important piece of legislation that small businesses really need to adhere to. So how do I file a report? I'll just take a quick moment on this. This is a screenshot of the homepage that you will see if you decide to file this report by yourself. Very easy to find. Even if you just Google search, beneficial ownership information reporting FinCEN, it'll take you to this page, and then you click on file a BOIR, and then you get started. You'll see a page, and it's basically a step-by-step, fill in the blank, check the boxes type of process. You move through the information for the reporting company, then you move through the information for the beneficial owner and company applicant to the extent it's applicable. And then at the end, you hit submit, and there you go. I will say, this filing does not cost anything. So that is the one thing about this. And that's what FinCEN says. And it's funny, when this all came out, FinCEN said something like, this won't be a big burden for small businesses because it's a free filing and maybe they need a little bit of time to talk to a lawyer and have a lawyer help them file this. So it really should only, I think they were like estimated like $87 per small business or something that it would cost to do all of this. But I don't necessarily agree with that because, there's just a lot of nuances to this, a lot of pieces of the puzzle. So I think it's probably going to turn out to be a little bit more than that. But again, that goes back to the whole idea of just the some of the challenges. And I guess that'll get me over to our next piece here about legal challenges. I just want to take 2 seconds before we get to the Q&A to touch on this. Again, I know so many businesses don't even know this is real, but to the extent that businesses do, and maybe they read the headlines of, the New York Times or whatever you want, choose your legal publication. There has been, not surprisingly, legal challenges to this piece of legislation. There were legal challenges long before, it even came out. Lots of pushback, lots of comments from people saying, this is an invasion of our privacy. Don't you already, the government already has all of our information anyway, don't they? So it's kind of duplicative. Why are we doing this? Or the bad actors that FinCEN is trying to weed out. What makes you think they're going to file these reports? The people that are going to file these reports are going to be small businesses like you guys on this call that are doing everything right. Yeah, so there's been some backlash, and it all kind of culminated back in February. In particular, a ruling came out from the US District Court in Alabama that ruled the Corporate Transparency Act unconstitutional. It was this big breaking news. It spread everywhere. But the biggest piece to keep in mind, though, is it's just a district court ruling case, and it only applies to the plaintiffs in that case. So everyone, mistakenly thought, oh, the Corporate Transparency Act, it's gone. Like, I don't have to do this. Unfortunately, our advice to all of our clients and my advice to you on this call is yes, you do still need to make these filings. We don't know what's going to happen yet with this district court case. The government quickly appealed it, not surprisingly. And, it could go up to the Supreme Court, honestly. I do think there is an argument to be made that this is a pretty, broad step by Congress. And yeah, but who knows? It's too hard to tell. And like I said previously, what I really wanted to emphasize were these penalties. So, there's these deadlines, there's these penalties for non-compliance, and it's just not worth it to not make the filing when we don't know where this legislation is going to go. And also, I will say copycat lawsuits, though, are out there too. We are in our task force here at Corman, Jackson, and Krantz are following these very closely because, yes, there are plaintiffs, I'll say, that see this Alabama case and they're like, oh my goodness, let's try in our state. So that, for instance, Michigan, for one, there's a lawsuit out there now trying to get the CTA ruled as unconstitutional. But say that it gets appealed and, all the way to Supreme Court. Honestly, I don't think that this is really ever going to go away. I think the FinCEN is really harping in on the fact that this is a practice that's already done in other countries. We're kind of behind the ball. And if anything, it might be narrowed a little bit. And also, I will say my last piece on there is state laws. Even if, the Corporate Transparency Act goes away on a federal level, a lot of states are implementing their own versions of it. New York, for one, has LLC Act, they call it, that is going to be effective this year, and Ohio may follow suit, or other states may follow suit. So just to say, if you happen to hear or see things about this lawsuit, just know that yes, it's important, but no, it doesn't mean that you guys should not file and just ignore all of this. Because again, FinCEN is really pushing that this is something that, we're behind on. And no, we promise you that we're keeping all of your information private. It's only for, it's only going to be for, law enforcement officials and other things like that. And it's so easy and things like that. But regardless, I'm going to guess that everybody on this call, this is important stuff. And again, I thank you all so much for joining. Before I get to questions, I'm going to skip just one slide to basically say that if you guys do have a specific questions or, some of you guys that are small businesses on here, again, Corman, Jackson, and Krantz is located in both Cleveland and Columbus. We do have an office in downtown Columbus, and I know a lot of you on the call are probably from that area. We do have a program. It's called our GC Advantage program, where smaller businesses, startups that are just getting started, but maybe need a little bit of extra help from a lawyer to just review employment contracts, review CTA filings, and that's why I'm bringing it up. But you're not at a point in the business where you have the need for a lawyer full-time or to bring someone in-house. This particular program is something that we set up to help those businesses to say, hey guys, if you need help from someone, we'll be your outside general counsel. It's a very predictable flat fee program where you can reach out to your attorney 24/7 and not have to worry about, oh, I'm picking up the phone. Should I pick up the phone? Should I talk to my lawyer? It's very predictable. And so I just wanted to mention that too, because it's something that we've rolled out within the last year or so in our small business, and our startup clients have really appreciated having that as an option for stuff like this. If something like this comes up with the Corporate Transparency Act and you're like, I don't know this. Well, and at the same time, you need, someone to take a look at an employment agreement because you're bringing on your first employee. It's all covered. So anyway, if you guys have any more questions about our GC Advantage program, two of our lovely Columbus partner and Columbus associate there on the screen. So yeah, we're both split in between the Cleveland and Columbus offices. It's a wonderful program. And so I just wanted to mention that if anyone has any questions on it, definitely please feel free to reach out. I'm so happy to be here today with you guys because, we can talk about this stuff, and I can just hopefully be a resource for you all as you continue on your small business journey. With that, I'll say open up to questions. It looks like we have about 10 minutes. And Matt, I think you were going to get back on to kind of lead some of the questions here.
Yeah, so I can see that someone, Jeff, has already asked,
Oh, great. Oh, yes, the chat.
what about wholly owned subsidiaries? Do both sub and parent register, or only the parents?
That is a great point. Thank you so much for that question. I did debate whether or not to put that in the slides here today because I will say some of our even small business clients, yes, they are maybe wholly owned by a bigger company. So what does that mean to them as the subsidiary? I will say if you, as say your company is the subsidiary, is wholly owned by a company above them that is exempt, almost all of the time, you as well as a subsidiary would also be exempt, but with a caveat. FinCEN, because they're FinCEN, and I can obviously, and I'll share this too after, FinCEN has a great, one thing I will applaud them for, a great, what they call a small entity compliance guide, easy to find, search it. I definitely will share the link there that goes through all of this and into a deeper dive on all of those exemptions. So the exemption that I'm mentioning is the subsidiary exemption, where there are, I would say, probably about a dozen of the 23 overall exemptions, where if your company is wholly owned by a company that fits within one of those 12 exemptions, then you also do not have to file. But there are a few exemptions where just because you're wholly owned, or you're the parent company that wholly owns you as a subsidiary is exempt, doesn't always necessarily, like, if it's a certain exemption that's not within FinCEN's list, then you would not be considered exempt as well. So either you as a subsidiary would have to find another exemption that applies to you, or you would have to disclose. So I think, again, it just goes to show just the little nuances. Just when we get a question answered from FinCEN, we get more questions over and over. But I will say, I'll use the example that I used in the presentation because it has applied to a lot of our clients, specifically the large operating company exemption. We have, and I'll say, for instance, some of our parent companies have formed new subsidiaries this year. Oh no, 90 days to make that initial filing. So thankfully, though, at least in some of the cases, not always, the subsidiary has been wholly owned by one parent, and that one parent is considered a large operating company. That parent has 20 or more employees, they have 20 million in revenue, whatever. They're in the United States. So in that case, subsidiary does not have to worry about anything. And I will also say too, I don't believe I mentioned this earlier. If you are exempt, you do not have to make any filing. You don't have to tell FinCEN anything, which again, it's like, well, how would FinCEN know that if I forgot to file, that it wasn't because I was exempt or whatever. But yes, you don't have to make any filing or make any indication to FinCEN that you are exempt either. So, but if, of course, things change, you're a wholly owned subsidiary and your parent company, I don't know, loses 10 employees and is no longer considered a large operating company, that exemption goes away. It goes away for them, and it goes away for you as a subsidiary. Is that basically, I think, the whole question there? Was there another piece to it, Matt?
I think you got that one.
Okay, great.
The next question, is this a one-time filing, or do we have to do it annually?
Thankfully, it is a one-time filing. Yes, as long as there are no changes, though, or corrections. So if you are a small business owner, you have a 30-year lease of your business location, and you don't move your residential address, you don't, nothing changes essentially, then yeah, you're done. You're all good. But yeah, I think what's really unfortunately going to get people, or hopefully not, is the goal that yes, if things change, if the information that you put, that information that you submitted to FinCEN changes, then yes, you do have to update FinCEN. And that's not necessarily annually, though. That's, again, within 30 days of that change. So that's the only thing I like to say. But hopefully it's a one-time thing and you never have to think about it again. But definitely when you're doing the filing, at the end, it gives you the option, to save your answers, print them, do it, keep it somewhere. Just make sure that you oh yeah, what did I say on this again? Okay, no, I'm good. I don't have to update it. So yeah, hopefully cross our fingers that all of us here on this call, as small business owners, are something that's just a one and done. So you just have the headache now, and then you're done.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I could see it being kind of tricky to remember that, oh, I moved my house and then, oh, I have to update my BOI. Like that is something that
Oh,
you wouldn't necessarily be thinking about. But
yes. And I think
um,
it's from us, we're so happy to help our clients with all of this. It's what we're here for. Our clients are expecting it from us, but we are really honing in that, guys, how am I going to know if you move? So, yeah, if someone else helps you out in filing these reports, definitely, make sure to keep them apprised of updates.
this next question, I had the same exact question. We work with a lot of businesses where they don't have like a business address. Their
Mhm.
house, their residence is their business address, or maybe they have a mailbox with like a UPS store or at a co-working space.
Yes. Yep.
What do those people do when if their home address is their business address or it's one of these other types of mailboxes?
Yeah. So if that's the case, obviously, no matter what, it does have to be a physical address. And so I say things like the PO box says it's not clear. And that's funny you ask that though, because we have clients like that who are like, well, we just want to receive business mail somewhere that's not in our own house, but we do our business at our house. That is where the business takes place. So we've been saying use your residential address because it is your business address. I would take that over putting something like a PO box because I do think that also you know, um, might attract FinCEN's eyes or something. Because I think the point is, I don't know who the heck is going to be the ones at FinCEN monitoring this. I mean, aren't all of us here looking for employees all the time? Like, who are they going to task at FinCEN to be able to handle all of this? Like I said at the beginning, 30 million or more. And I think that's a lowballing it. I think obviously there's so many small business owners out there. I think the 30 million is probably 30 million that actually know this even exists. I think it's a lot more than that. So yeah, how but I don't want any of my clients or any of you guys here on this call to attract any eyes. So I would just say, but yeah, I mean, if that's where you're doing your work, then yes, it's definitely just got to be, it's your principal place of business. That is basically, what the thing to keep in mind. Where do you do your business every day? Mhm.
Okay. One other question that I have, and there's still time for more questions if anyone wants to throw any in the Q&A feature. But one question I have, I'm kind of always paranoid about scams. And I know that even when a small business is going to set up their IN, you Google that, there's, half a dozen websites that are happy to charge you to set up your IN. Are you starting to see, or do you expect to see like any scams related to this or like phishing emails or people offering, to do this for you for a fee that wouldn't necessarily be like an attorney, or even sending you like emails saying that you are have a fine and you should pay this, pay for them for your fine for not filing this.
Yes. 100%. Thank you, Matt, for hitting on that because that is I would say it's slowly, like we're seeing it, but not a lot. But our thoughts, and it's funny because I was at a roundtable group of different practitioners that are all, are all kind of working through this and bouncing ideas of how, XYZ people are handling it. That is that was a big topic. We think that as this rolls out, as more people find out about it, especially maybe once we hit that 1 year deadline and all of a sudden, the deadline comes up for currently registered entities before January 1 of this year, that we're going to start to see a lot more of that. There are going to be those scams. You're going to get emails. You're going to get, letter notices in the mail that have big bold letters of, you're in breach. You're pay us $1,000 or we're coming after your business and shutting you down. I think that's going to be a big deal. I think no matter what, though, FinCEN has said at least the very, minimum that they've said has been they will never contact you like that. If you get anything like that, it's spam. It is someone to try to take advantage of you guys as small business owners who don't know anything about this. But that's why I'm glad you guys are here because you know about this. I'm concerned about those small businesses that are just like, I don't know what this is. And just, look at it and like, oh my gosh, I'm scared. Or, oh yes, this person's only charging me $10 to help me. Okay. And because this stuff is very sensitive information, we do recognize that. So here at our firm, when we have our clients give us this information, we created this extra secure, like, fill in the blank form. In order, because we even recognize that even though we're their lawyers, like, this is their driver's license, their passports, their it's like some really sensitive information. So you don't want to just be giving that to anybody. And I will say too, one piece, sometime we've had accountants ask us if your small business has an accountant that helps you guys out. I've seen that accountants are they're kind of the opinion that doing this is considered the unauthorized practice of law. So a lot of them won't do it. So they're kind of pushing their clients over to their lawyers to do it, and things like that. So like I said, this is why our clients are, like, we want you to do this. And so that's why we're like, okay, we got to get on board here and we're going to learn all this thing and we're going to become the experts so that no one else has to, because it's a lot and it's changing all the time. So we're keeping up on that. But yes, definitely keep an eye on that stuff, please. The FinCEN's not going to get to you guys like that. They're not going to do that stuff. No. So, and if that changes, stay tuned as far as, if it comes out a year or two later and FinCEN's like, okay, no one's doing this, we got to buckle down here. We'll keep an eye on that stuff. But for right now, definitely something to keep in mind. I'm sure many people will take advantage of this and try to make a quick buck and steal your personal information. So, yeah.
Great. And I think that kind of hits on the last question. Someone asked, like, would we expect them to contact us? Doesn't sound like Vincent is going to contact us at this point. That's not part of the playbook. It's us filing with them. But if that changed, there'd probably be some public information shared about that we would know that's happening.
Yes, I will say right now, and we're monitoring this closely because of course we've been doing these filings for our clients and we're like, and of course it requires a piece of you have to like give an email address just to then, once the filing is submitted, you get like hey, your filing has been submitted. Congrats, here's a copy, So we've been thinking, since they have that email address, are they going to then send something like, hey, it's been approved, or hey, we've looked at it and verified everything? No, I haven't gotten anything like that. So zero communication. We just file it and get a, hey, your filing has been complete. Save this for your records. Not to say that won't happen. Like you were hinting at, Matt. I wouldn't be surprised at some point. I don't know how the heck they're going to do it. It's just, we didn't even know what this database was going to look like until it came out January 1. So I can't imagine that. Yeah, I would say so far it's really been a process of just submitting this, and again, maybe somewhere down the line, but yes, definitely a good point, because if you do get stuff from FinCEN like now saying, hey, you didn't do this, you're getting this $1,000 fine, chances are it's a scam.
Yeah. Well, great. Samantha, I think you maybe have one slide that has like your contact information. Want to pop that up there before we wrap this up. Just want everyone.
Oh, this is one that, oh my goodness, my marketing helped Matt and I put these together. So and I like didn't even realize it was my whole face here until the end. But yes, it does. Please feel free to reach out to me. Even if you just have a basic question, I'm here for you guys. If you couldn't, or if you can't even think of questions because you're like, whoa, what is all this? And you think of it later. I'm definitely available by email, but also phone number too. Check out my LinkedIn. And also here I do have some resources for you guys to visit. Our law firm's website is kjk.com. And there we have a resources page. We print a newsletter every week. Feel free to get on our mailing list, because a lot of it is myself and my colleagues, Corporate Transparency Act updates and things like that. So we really want to make sure our clients and just our connections in general, like you guys on this call, understand what's going on. And if there's changes that you can rest assured that we're following that information. in those changes. And, we're here to update you guys and answer your questions. And, if you think your business might be a little bit more complicated and need a little bit more of an analysis, again, we got a great team here, and our paralegal is the one that makes the filing. She's wonderful. And even we're both in Cleveland and Columbus. Definitely a very strong mid-sized Ohio firm. We are full service here, but my love is corporate space, and this particular piece of legislation is just such a big part for us right now. So we're doing everything we can to learn it and to make sure that we help our clients to the best of our abilities. So, and thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. Matt, you're going to circulate the slides, hopefully, or at least the presentation will be available on Cultivate's website. Is that
Yeah, so what we'll do, it takes us a week or two to get this together, but we'll take the video of this and put it on our website. And we'll email everybody that registered for the event. We'll send you a link to reference this the video of this presentation.
Mhm.
So you could go back through it or share that with a colleague as well.
Yeah, please. Yeah, share it with anyone that couldn't attend today. Definitely, feel free to share with them. Or again, like Matt said, the presentation will be available, but if you'd like to see my slide deck, definitely reach out. I'm happy to share it, and definitely happy to get together and answer any other questions. And just thank you all so much for your time. Like I said at the beginning, this is such important stuff, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to learn about it. And yeah, thank you. Mhm.
All right. Thank you very much for joining,
Yeah,
everyone.
everybody. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye-bye.